Hello there. I am your moderator, Sage Goodwin, and as always, I'm joined by the automation visionary, Samit Halvadia. How are you doing?
I'm always, again, just very excited about how you're going to introduce me. The adjectives have gotten to the point where it's almost a running joke in the EUC community to figure out, I believe that there's parlays and bets being placed on what the next adjective you're going to use for me, Sage, is. But automation visionary, listen, I'll take it.
Oh, yeah. And David, you also get one of these. We're also joined by the newest addition to the Fast and Furious, David Bieneman, the CEO of Liquidware and noted member of the technology space. How are you doing today?
Good, doing really good. Thank you so much. Samit and I are both in the Chicagoland area, so we woke up to a nice weather today. You can't complain. You wake up to a nice, beautiful, sunny day. So yeah, no, we're doing good out here in Chicago.
That's good.
So, David, is it true that there was initially a pre-call where you suggested to Sage that we do EUC in Lamborghinis with a bunch of nerds, kind of
Yeah, I
like
guess
getting coffee in cars with comedians?
we chatted about that briefly. I said we could do something in the Lambo. We've got a couple other little fun toys we could pull out and play with. So if we wanted to do that, we could even do it where you're driving one and I'm driving the other one, and we're just going back and forth. That's fine too. So absolutely,
The Fast and the Furious. It all makes sense, Sage.
absolutely.
The sea levels in cars getting coffee.
Having a little fun with it, right? You know, you have to
Right.
mix it up once in a while, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I love it.
We'll see if we can get this rocking and rolling at some point. I think it would be a fun idea.
sounds good. I'd love to do it.
So going through the tech space, we've got VDI, we've got EUC, we've got virtual machines. We've got all these new technologies that are looking to revolutionize and completely reimagine the way that we interact with technology. But I think one of the things that we always run into when you're like, I've come down from the mountain. I have this great idea, this new software, this new feature technology stack. We're gonna get this rock and rolling. And we always run into, oh yeah, people have to run applications on it. And not just new applications, they have to run all of the applications. So Samit, David, we've all been, you guys have been in the space for a while in this. I imagine you've heard the application problem before.
I think we both live and breathe it. We both take very different approaches to it. He actually has a solution that, David will let you talk about in terms of FlexApp One and kind of your approach towards ensuring that you can get as many productive applications modernized as possible for end user productivity. But you're absolutely right, Sage. From our side, it is all about the automation. And I've talked to David about this at length, even when we were at NerdioCon and met each other for the first time in person, even though we've known each other for over a decade. It takes post-pandemic trips to Cancun for us to actually meet face to face. But the idea behind the change that's happened and the shift that's happened over the last 10 years is there was always kind of just hey, I need to solve the app problem through isolation or through layering or through a combination thereof. I need to poke holes with app fees and dynamic suite composition. There's been everyone trying to be a silver bullet to solving the application problem, when the reality is that the application problem was a byproduct of 20 years worth of legacy debt. And what you really needed to do, again, is meet that customer where they are on their journey and give them choice. So what we're trying to do through automation is remove a bunch of that mundane stuff and give them the choice to use the right type of delivery. And we've talked about this concept of informed app delivery before, Sage, but my goal ultimately by leveraging Rimo3 as an orchestration platform is to allow it's informed app delivery. It's to allow the right user to get the right application delivered in the right workspace for that moment in time. Right. So sometimes it'll be locally installed. Sometimes it'll be containerized. Sometimes it'll be session mounted. I don't care. Ultimately, what my goal is to bring compute and automation to enable that choice. And this is where David and I kind of have decided that the right thing to do is focus on a partnership that will add an additional kind of arrow in the quiver So from my perspective, it's about enabling choice. David, probably a good point for you to kind of jump in and talk about your perspective on the app problem.
Sure, absolutely. Well, Liquidware has been, focused on helping customers maintain availability of their resources and machines, first and foremost, and that means getting your system up and going and getting to the point where you can get the application, and then having the necessary things around that let the application run on your machine. So that's kind of been a whole focus of ours with our suite, our Liquidware Essentials suite. Obviously, a key component of that is the Flex app piece, where it is the application portability engine, and it does deliver the application to whatever platform that you happen to be running on that day, whether it's VMware, Citrix, physical laptops managed with Microsoft Endpoint Manager Intune. So our goal has been to make sure that you can get to your system, it's up and going, and that obviously means the application has to be accessible to the user, because that's what accesses the data. And so, our whole suite is focused on that availability and that user experience behind leveraging that system, that application, and the administrator experience behind deploying and managing that system and application. That's equally as important as that user experience, because if you can't administer it well, you can't scale it. And then at the end of the day, we're all about optimizing the environment and saving money for the company as well. And that's through, again, the whole suite of solutions that really allow you to get that application, like I said, regardless of the platform that you're on, with a good user experience and good admin experience. And so that's really been our focus. And Flex app is the way that we deliver that application portability, but it's not the only way. Because today, Flex app isn't that silver bullet, one application solution to solve everything, because there's not one of those, as you kind of alluded to a minute ago. Yeah. So, there's locally installed applications, there's session hosted applications, there's SaaS applications that need to be isolated, applications that if you isolate them, they don't work properly with the rest of the system. There's all those different situations. And and within that, you need to be able to deliver that application to the user on whatever it takes to make that happen. It can't, if it's not Flex app, it's not Flex app. And so we've moved to more of a center position, more of an agnostic position, to where we really don't care the platform that you're on or even the application delivery technology. We just want you to be successful. So we offer Flex app and Flex app One, but we also offer our Profile Unity product offers management of many application deployment solutions. So you can deploy Flex app, you can deploy Flex app One, it can deploy them back from the cloud, stream to a local laptop, but it can also deploy an MSIX. It can deploy an MSIX as an app attached to a laptop in the field that's not even connected to a LAN and is only going through the cloud.
Wow.
Which, if you unpack that, is something that nobody else can do today, right?
Yeah.
They have to do an app attach with a well-connected machine to a LAN.
Yeah.
We can do an app attach with a machine that's connected to a cloud on an object storage, right? So that's insane. So, and then we're also supporting, of course, app V. It's going EOL, but there's a lot of folks that still have it out there, and they need to continue to manage it, at least deploy it, retract it, maybe make some real-time fix-ups to the application before it's deployed to a user. So that's where Profile Unity will come in. So even though we have Flex app and we have our way to make an app get out there and make it compatible and get it out there in various different ways through different solutions, it's not the end all be all. You're still going to need things like isolation, MSIX, or you're still going to need things like backing the application from the cloud. And that's where we will then use other technologies and intermix those, but manage those under one platform with Profile Unity Flex app, so that you can, you don't have to go to different places to deploy an application. You go to one spot to deploy it, whether that's Profile Unity or you can go, if that's Intune, great. We'll take our apps and you can push them up to Intune and manage it all through Intune and just use that platform if you like. So that's kind of where we're at with our solution and our stance.
It makes perfect sense, right? Like the enabling choice and being heterogeneous around the application support, not just supporting one format. It's a must in today's world, and it will be a must in tomorrow's world, right?
Yeah, if we just supported Flex app, it would die by itself, because it can't do everything that needs to be done on the whole mass out there of EUC. It just can't.
Yeah.
But by combining together the different solutions that are available out there, you can deliver all your applications to your different deployment mechanisms that you have out there. So.
Well, what's interesting about this too, David, is because you'll have a unique perspective on it, right? For those that might not know FlexApp or the history behind it, was it is it a chicken and egg thing? What was it first? Was it the Liquidware Stratosphere and the Profile Unity where you're doing the management and then the actual ongoing troubleshooting and ensuring that the user's having a great experience? Was it the assessment ahead of time to do the discovery of unmanaged applications that spawned a need for FlexApp? Like where did that come from? Like was it FlexApp built Profile Unity or Profile Unity and that built FlexApp?
That's a good question. So it started with Stratosphere, as you said, Stratosphere Fit and Stratosphere UX. Our goal was to help the masses understand how to go from physical to a VDI, or how to go
virtual. Okay, got it.
Virtual, go to physical to a Citrix environment, right?
Yeah.
And all the necessary components that we're running right now in the field to deliver those applications and their horsepower and the applications in use and the infrastructure components between the end user and the new infrastructure that you wanted to put in place. And we would assess that and measure that and provide you information so that you could make an informed decision about what kind of resources you need to design and where your bottlenecks were going to be and what kind of application you need to prepare and have available so that you could go through user acceptance testing and get a new environment up and going that at least met or possibly exceeded the prior environment, right? And so you had to know then, well, what was my login and what was my application launch time before? And what applications do I have? And what's my network latency? Am I going to have a good remote display protocol with my HDX or my ICA or my RDP or my now RDP short path through this type of connection? And so with Stratosphere, we could understand that and produce reports for many levels of different types of administrators so that they could then effectively plan and handle a migration. So that's where we started.
So hold on, let me stop you there for a second. So that makes perfect sense, right? Stratosphere was there to help people move from the physical world towards VDI, right? And this is, we'll call it 2007, 2006.
Yes, 2009. Mm-hmm. For us anyway, it's 2009.
For you guys. So what's interesting to me, and I look at the fact that there different discrete groups that you're talking about there. You've got your desktop engineering sysadmins who are in charge of physical, and then you've got your virtualization, which there's one virtualization admin for every 7 desktop engineering admins that exist. Was it possible for you guys to actually help bridge that gap and bring a convergence of the two? Because we're starting to see it in cloud. And the reason I asked this specifically is that I thought AVD, now that I'm thinking about it, right, I thought AVD and Windows 365 was the first time that you're going to start bringing traditional desktop sysadmins and virtualization experts together. But it sounds like with Stratosphere initially, that was kind of the goal.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on a good point there, because it wasn't just that wasn't the only tie-in. We really brought those teams together with profiles and with applications as well. And so when we bring our solutions into the organization no longer has to use, has a Citrix team that uses one profile solution on the Citrix system, and then laptop team that uses another profile management solution on the laptops. And then you've got, maybe a little bit of AVD, so now using a whole nother solution with another management on top of that. And now you've got fractured management. You got 3 different ways to do things. That gets confusing for the administrators. And that now you don't have the desktop administrators anymore helping with this new project because it's out of their pay grade. And this is for the Citrix guy, or this is for the AVD guy, or this is for the VMware Ryzen guys. And so you get this, you get 2 camps and 2 teams and 2 different ways to do things, but you're still deploying a shortcut. I want to deploy a shortcut to both environments. It's 2 different ways. I want to deploy an application in 2 different environments. It might be 2 different application virtualization technologies even at that point. Yeah. So, and that really caused the separation and division. It was hard to share information and understand compute and usage across the organization. So there's a lot of difficulties when you build those silos. And so we helped break down those silos from the beginning, whether it was with Stratosphere for different parts of the organization to understand consumption and to report it up to the management and to make good planning decisions and understand what's in use around the organization or where the constraints are. And when it came to the profiles, to be able to deploy shortcuts, drives, printers, applications to whatever means that the user was using to log on that day. What if you make an acquisition and you have a different type of network on that system? Now you've got a different profile and a different application virtualization, a different performance monitoring. And so because you maybe use the platform solution, and our solution then is agnostic, right? So you wind up using something that works cross-platform, and it opens up the communication lines between those different parts of the organization. It actually doesn't silo them. It allows them to bridge to the other parts of the organization. The nice part about the products is they also, a lot of them have read-only access, like on the Stratosphere side, or full RBAC with auditing on the Profile Unity side. So you know who's making what changes and where and whatnot. So it really helps, people that maybe don't even have that kind of, that are many different levels of administrators all work on this new high-end technology, because the set of tools kind of abstracts all those differences and allows them to get into that. So without having to learn it brand new every time.
So it's interesting, right? Because what you're really doing with Stratosphere initially on this journey was starting to figure out, I'm oversimplifying it here, David, but it's a gap analysis, right? It's a gap analysis from between where your performance is today in physical versus where it could be. And there, I'm sure you found the profiles, you found the application problems, you found all of the potential issues, like you said, with RBAC versus being able to do everything directly through whatever management plane or fractured management planes you might be using.
And again, it's different than amongst every system. You can do a little bit over here, but you can't do all those things over there. And you can do less of them over here. So you really, you don't. Yeah. So we really even that management out. But please keep going.
No. So that's exactly part of it, right? So when you noticed these gaps, right, is that where FlexApp first kind of reared its head and said, I see this gap around the application delivery across physical and virtual.
We would help assess for the migration and help plan for the design for the new system, and then have the backup information so that when you got on the new system, you could compare it and say, well, our logins have drifted or they're much better or whatever the case may be, right? So that was critical. But then people would come to us and say, hey, wait a second, can you help us actually shift over to that environment? Can you help us take our profile and get it over to that new environment? And, for us, we understood how to do a lot of that stuff because we were doing this since, early 90s, manually. Right. People writing scripts to do if members of groups, then copy these shortcuts over or copy these innies over and to their home directory and change them and look through them and put their personal usernames in there and stuff like that. And redirect these applications to look in home drives instead of C locations for configuration files, right? And make things multi-user compatible. So we had all that experience. So when people said they had these challenges, maybe they were going to Amazon Workspaces, maybe they were going to, VMware View at that time, and they wanted to help lift and shift going over there. There was actually some big platform vendors that said to us, can you help us lift and shift going over there? And we actually, again, had created a lot of Citrix tools at my prior company. So for application management and user management and monitoring. So it was, again, pretty easy for us to kind of dive in there. We wound up meeting Jason E. Smith, who you've talked to before, and his partner, John McDonald. And they had a company called Profile Unity, and actually it was called Intrigue Systems. And they had two products. One was Profile Unity and profile portability, and one was profile administration. It would do like GPO stuff and administer the profile.
Gotcha.
One would back it up and restore it, and one would administer it. We combine those together into Profile Unity, and that's what we have today. And so that now helps people lift profiles from a roaming profile, let's say, trim it down to just what you need and get it filtered and optimized, and then store that away. And every time you log on, can present that back to you and save the changes you make to it away. And it can do that in the cloud, and it can present that profile to you on any of the delivery mechanisms that you might have, Windows delivery mechanisms. And so that product there came from kind of the next evolution. We helped you assess and design so that you can migrate. Now we help you lift your profile up and migrate them over. And once you put Profile Unity in to lift that profile and migrate it over, you never disrupt your user again, because these shifts from Windows 7 to Windows 8 or Windows 7 to Windows 10 and Windows 10 to Windows 11, they disrupt the user hugely, right? Because oftentimes that profile has got to be recreated. There's a lot of stuff in that profile. And you're putting your user through that pain over and over and over again, couple of years after a couple of years successively. And so when you put Profile Unity in place to help this lift and shift, you now remove that user from this upgrade nightmare all the time. And so that's how that product came in. And then it just made sense for us to then, try to take the application as the next, challenge and make that portable. So, we had made the user profile portable, decoupled it from the operating system. Didn't matter anymore as you moved operating systems and platforms. The user didn't feel the pain anymore. And then we said, okay, now how do we do that with the applications? Because great, you've got your profile, but you still need the applications. And instead of having to have a mirrored environment set up somewhere, we did this on-demand application. When we first created Flex App, we never created to where it like integrated into the operating system and it was part of it, and now it's part of an image. We created it so it was what we call click to layer, or all apps on demand. That was how we created to begin with from like the get-go. So you could take just a generic C Windows, let's say, on let's say Terminal Services or Citrix or whatever, and you could put your security software in there and get it all like you want it, but not put applications in there. Instead, you take your applications and you have them somewhere on a file share, and then you have user groups, and then you assign user groups to people and
permissions,
permissions, or you assign application names to people, Word, Excel, this, that. And when they log in, those applications magically appear on their desktop as shortcuts. They double click it. They're instantly activated into that operating system. And then the resource consumption might happen on that machine. So you actually get no resource consumption until the user actually activates the app too, which is really cool. So the app has services and things that are running in the background sometimes. Those don't actually start up until you double click that app. So you're actually saving a little resources there too, and not using that license. But we wound up moving on to the application side of it. It just seemed like a natural side of it for us to decouple and reattach those. And
so now you're touching
that's
all
in 2011,
parts.
I think, is what we did.
Yeah, because I think you're touching all parts of the workspace, from the experience to the user to the application, basically everything but the operating environment, which sits with Microsoft, right?
Absolutely,
but, I mean, from that perspective, it's as close to a holistic, all-in-one type of solution that you can get towards.
Absolutely, it's an end-to-end solution. The Stratosphere product will continue to also run and provide optimization in real time. So if it sees that processes are going crazy or consuming too much or taking too much memory and they're not being used at all, that Stratosphere Optimizer product, while Stratosphere is running and watching your system and reporting back how it's working, also will do real-time optimization against that user environment. So if you put a new environment out, but you couldn't user acceptance test it to the nth degree, and there was something wrong in it, and there was a hiccup in it, and some app is consuming resources, and you don't have time to cure that until your next rebuild of the environment, the images, and updates and refresh out and recompose. At this point, we're up on the system watching everything happening. We realize, hey, this is malfunctioning. This is consuming too many resources. We can keep that optimized, buying you that time until that next image refresh that you have to go through, recompose. So a lot of cool things with Stratosphere. It is an end-to-end solution. And actually, we just added on a fourth product, which is called Command Control, which does real-time monitoring and reach out and touch somebody administration. So you can click a user, remote control their screen, or actually you can get into their console and you can do all kinds of PowerShell and remote command line things without them even realizing it, without interrupting them from their screen. You could fix problems on a user's machine while they're helping people at a teller line, and they would never even know that you're fixing it for them. So that's a pretty cool product. It's a brand new product from us called Command Control. So
very cool. And let me ask you for two data points. Okay. Just anecdotal, right? As you were moving from physical to virtual, right? When you started with the Stratosphere technology, what percentage of digital transformations came to completion? I'm sure everyone looked at it, right? Everyone thought that they were going to be able to move nearly 80 to 100% of their physical devices to some semblance of VDI. Obviously, that never happened, right? I mean, it's only 150 to 200 million out of a billion, 1.2 billion, right? So it's less than 10%. Like, what did you see in terms of a typical success rate of the performance being as performant or better as you move to VDI?
Well, I think in the beginning, we would see that when people would move over, they would have long login times. That was the first thing. Login times were usually worse when they moved over to VDI. Sometimes applications would not enter not responding phases when they would move over to VDI. And we would be able to look at the assessment and say, well, wait a second, your login time was better before. You were instantly logged in.
Yeah.
Or you didn't have, certain lockups or certain challenges. But then, and there were bean counters involved early on too with this. So
same with cloud, which is going to be my next question.
Yeah. So as assessments were happening, and as people were building environments and they were trying to scale it up, usually they got chopped down to what resources they were going to provision, because it was a bean counter that was involved, and the environment wouldn't perform because they tried to give it one CPU. Now it's two CPUs but even two CPUs now isn't even enough. So now they should be giving it 3 or 4 CPUs, right? So, but back in the day, everybody was trying to do this with one CPU, and it was a cost reduction exercise is really what it was. It wound up costing more, not being as performant. And we didn't see as much success nearly in the beginning, but people's expectations were wrong. They didn't understand what they were going from and to, and they didn't understand what the constraints were in the middle. And we definitely helped improve the success rate because we gave them informed information where they could make a decision and realize you can't just use one CPU or whatever the case may be, or 2 gig of RAM. But and we also helped them. Sometimes the projects would start and they would immediately fail because people wouldn't have applications that they needed, or they just wouldn't be able to pull it all together, right? And Stratosphere was able to go out there and determine who's using what, how often, when do they use it, what's the patterns, when do they log in, where's the constraints, where are you going to need where you're going to need capacity at, and really help people then kind of plan for success. But in the beginning, there was a lot of failure. And as time went along, there was more success, of course. And as we came out with products to assist them even further with like profiles and applications, of course, things became even more successful. But then it shifted from just VDI to, the pandemic came and everybody wanted to go laptops, remote work from home,
laptops,
and go that way, because it still takes a lot to get one of these networks up and going with the snap of a finger if you're coming from ground zero. And that was just faster for people to do. So I guess at that time, even in 2020, we even started shifting more and decoupling from only VDI and stuff like that. But anyway, so.
Well, what's interesting about this, Sage, and the reason that I asked David this, right, is because of the fact that the bean counters are back involved when you're doing AVD and the migration to the cloud. Even Scott's gone through his growing pains. He's like, there was no reason for us to have a Windows 365 to even a 2 vCPU 4 gig machine, because the experience is going to be so poor, right? Mm-hmm. And like now it's no longer a SKU. So a lot of what David just kind of outlined as people were moving towards VDI from physical, it's the exact same thing that's happening again, the same financial justifications, the same, obviously the technology is a lot more advanced now. But the challenge set and the key players and characters in the story remain in place, which is, it was just a parallel that kind of struck me as interesting.
Yeah. But people are really focused, right? Money and cost optimization hasn't gone away, right?
No, of course
people still want to get more and they want to save more, right? So, that hasn't changed. But to be able to provide them the guidance as to, how they could, what they need to get the job done, and then that proof, are they getting the job done? They can adjust and then continue to expand if they had to, or scale if it was right sized. That's something that we're still finding out. We're helping with people every day. We're helping them with right sizing, image optimization, software licensing, recouping software they're not using, troubleshooting, helping with resource drain, like on disconnected sessions that they don't even realize are everywhere. We're helping people extend hardware life cycles where maybe some hardware is at the end of capacity, or they still have a 2 vCPU system in the cloud and they don't want to upgrade it yet. Optimizer can come in there and it can help extend that environment a little bit longer, especially with physical hardware. We're helping them have zero downtime migrations. We're helping them manage applications now. All that is driving down costs. So with us, they're getting more because they're buying one SKU, they're purchasing, they're investing in, whatever you want to call it. They're acquiring one SKU essentials. but they're driving down those, what I mentioned, 6, 7, 8 areas of, of cost.
Yeah.
So that still happens. People are still, especially now, right, with the economy, and everybody's just, wants to make sure that their investments are right. They're able to move to a different cloud if they want to, or a different way to deploy something that's faster, cheaper, better, more secure, right?
Oh, for sure.
And they want to reduce cost on the current environments. And so we're helping them do both. We're helping them move to faster, cheaper, better, right? By letting them decouple those components that they're locked into in those environments so that they can move to faster, cheaper, better if it's available. And then we're helping them reduce those costs once they're on that platform. So,
yeah. So when we're looking at a lot of this kind of thing, like you're saying, Samit, same story arc, same characters, different solution, different like process. And I feel like there's a lot of the same problem, but a different tool or a new tool that we're still trying to figure out exactly how to utilize it. Where do you see this moving forward with stuff like Liquidware, with stuff like Rimo3, with stuff like Windows 365? Where do you see this going forward?
It's a good question, Sage, and the reason that I'm being a little hesitant on answering it is because we've had this conversation, Sage, when we talked to Scott Manchester about this. He referred to this as kind of historical inertia, which is a term that you and I enjoy using. We love using it on a regular basis, right? We're going through that same historical inertia again, meaning, yes, there's different tooling. Yes, there's different solutions available, but we're following that same silly legacy process. The process is the limiting factor in adoption at scale, right? So when I start thinking about the next generation of workspaces that are going to be delivered, I think it's a little bit different. Right now, I think the answer is what I started with, which is enabling choice as it pertains to workspaces. So how you consume and deliver those workspaces, how you consume and deliver the applications is based on heterogeneity. The only way to enable heterogeneity is by removing complexity. You remove complexity through automation and solid solutions like FlexApp, right? So those pieces are a pretty well-defined path where I think for the next 3 years, we've got a lot of that kind of covered, assuming that people have the appetite. Let's put it that way. That's a nice way of putting whether it's financial, whether it's risk aversion, whether it's compliance and regulation. If there's an appetite for modern distribution and delivery and management, it can be achieved with the existing processes and tooling in place.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. As soon as I saw your solution initially, I saw how it took the applications and it packaged them, and then how it opened them, and how it went and tested them, and how it zoomed you into where they didn't open at, and how you got the ability to be able to go understand what wasn't going to work and focus your time and energies and remediate that. I immediately saw that you were on the same kind of path we were on, which was helping those users, helping those administrators, helping them get their job done. And that's what we've been doing since our inception. We want to make a good user experience, but we also want to make a good administrator experience. And that's exactly what you're doing too. It's something that's reliable and repeatable and consistent. And that's what you are supplying with Rimo3's with your product. And that's what we're delivering as well with our solutions, whether it's FlexApp or Profile Unity or Stratosphere. It's all about that user experience and that admin experience. And along with it, as a byproduct, there's a huge cost saving for the organization that comes into place there. So
100% right. I mean, the challenge that I'm thinking about though, Sage, if you go back to your question, I think we've got the next 3 to 5 years covered between tooling, automation, solutions, processes, and process innovation to an extent. What's really interesting is when you start thinking about some of the stuff that Microsoft is releasing, AI driven, a lot of it, obviously. You think about Copilot, you think about, obviously, we could talk about Chat GPT, but, that doesn't sit on your machine. Like when you start thinking about things like Copilot that are going to be running off of theoretically your hardware or Windows 365 infrastructure that's sitting in the cloud, that workspace delivery, David, to me becomes very interesting because all of a sudden legacy application functionality running alongside an ARM or M1 type of hardware profile that's able to create and run parallel processes like Copilot with your traditional application suddenly becomes an interesting interaction where do you offload that MPU? Do you actually consume it inside that virtual machine and pay for it? These are going to be the questions where we start thinking about the actual construct of the workspace evolving for the first time, right? This is the first time delivery of the workspace. Windows has always been Windows. It's always installed applications or it's streamed applications. It's always worked in the context of 90%. I click it and it runs, right? But I have to drive the behavior. Now you have something else alongside of you driving behavior, driving its own behavior, which has never existed. I mean, you can call Clippy something that kind of drove your behavior. But this is very different. Copilot and whatever AutoCAD comes out with for their version of Copilot and whatever every ISV comes with, your workspace is fundamentally changing. It's evolving to something that I don't know what it looks like. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think you're right. I think there's going to be some interactions between obviously just separate systems because you can have something in the middle, be able to go through and operate that. You know, we've all heard about RBA for the last couple of years. And so that obviously, you know, can do some of that. This is, you know, nowadays, everything that has been out already is probably just infant in its infant stage. Now, if you look at, you know, the large language models and the chat GPT and the stuff that we're all kind of looking forward to and talking about now, everything that was out prior, that's almost like, you know, a joke, right? It seems like at this point, right? There's so much that's going to be happening from this point forward. And I think we're all trying to, you know, we all want to be involved. We all want to be in that as well. And so to that effort, you know, we did just integrate command control with chat GPT. It's not to the level of bringing it to the end user as you were talking about with Copilot, where the end users maybe even going between, let's say, their Mac and a Windows session and some stuff's happening automatically with, you know, copies and pastes and moving stuff around and some work happening from a Copilot or something like that. But we're bringing chat GPT to the administrator, again, back to that, helping the administrator side of the house be able to do their job and get their job done. And so we're interfacing with chat GPT with command control is in the remediation script department. So if you're a many level of different administrators, maybe they're good at creating CMD scripts. Maybe they're okay creating PowerShell scripts. Maybe they're not. What we're doing is we're integrating chat GPT there so you can create that great remediation PowerShell script with ease.
That's so great.
Yeah. So actually this right now, I think in beta right now, our guys, our team, and even external folks, if they want, can get a hold of us. I'm sure we can give them the beta, can see chat GPT in action now in answering questions for the administrative user. So for instance, let's say you're seeing a process and it's banging away on the system. It's like spools SV and it's 100%. You're like, what is that? You can click a button right now in command control, and the command control product will go to chat GPT and ask, what is spools SV? And it will get the manufacturer, it will get the a few other pieces of metadata, and it will return that back to your screen. So you can say, this is the print spooler service. I shouldn't terminate that then, should I? Or I can safely terminate that then, right? And, you know, with something else, and then boom, terminate it. So that's our current kind of AI integration.
That's cool.
And we'll have that. And I think that's available right here the second half of this year. So June. So a couple of days, you should be able to play with that functionality. Yeah.
Very cool. I mean, it's really exciting seeing kind of how these ISVs and who's going to adopt it first, right? This is always kind of a telling thing for me where I start thinking about, okay, is it going to be the heavy engineering apps? Is it going to be, I mean, obviously we know Microsoft is doing it, and my goodness, I mean, I've seen the videos, and, you know, we've been fortunate enough to actually see some real life demos of Copilot. It's going to change the way that your workspace, I mean, eventually your Windows workspace should theoretically just be kind of a web surface, right? Like it's almost like when Citrix acquired man, now I can't even remember the name of that company, but the concept of micro apps. The one that I remember was, as they were thinking about this, it made sense. Instead of having a Windows workspace, a Windows desktop, what you have is you have basically a web surface type of workspace where I could say I need to do my expenses. But instead of launching the full Concur, which is hosted on ZenApp somewhere, it would just launch the piece that you needed to say, yes, I want to approve expenses, or yes, I want to submit expenses, right? So that concept of being outcome driven, right? I think that AI is actually going to be the companion AI for these applications is going to achieve that. That was something, man, it's going to drive me nuts, but it was a big acquisition that ended up going nowhere.
Yeah, I forget what it was too, but it's ringing a bell.
But now it's all kind of coming back to the point where you can actually leverage AI to do a lot of that. So I think what that's going to do for the users as well, David, is everything, infrastructure is going to have to move away from the endpoint. It has to, otherwise the compute just can't keep up.
Yeah, you know what? I hear you there, but something we've been doing this year more than ever has been enabling laptops in the field with FlexApp One.
Okay.
And so and the reason why is because people have just gone out and bought a cheap laptop and said, get this out to the user, get it up and going. And, yes, it's easy, right? It's easy for them to get that out there, right? And now you got full horsepower right at your fingertips. And there's a lot of other challenges with that. So it's not always the most practical thing to do, but that's where we come in and say, well, let's make that easier for you on those other challenges. Let's take that profile and decouple it. Let's take those applications, decouple them. Let's get them into something like Endpoint Manager Intune, where you can get those applications down and enabled on that laptop and activated easily, right? Or deactivated and upgraded easily. And if you can manage centrally everything that's out there dispersed in the field, but use that local cheap horsepower in the field, that could be good for some organizations too. So it really depends on,
the use case,
security posture for the use case, the security posture you're trying to take, or if it's a performance endpoint, raw performance that you need out there, then maybe you need something more physical in your hands. So we're trying to meet the customer, as you always say, where they're at on their journey. And we've been just doing a lot more physical lately than ever. And but the business has just exploded in that direction. So, but we're still.
And it should.
Yeah.
So it should, right? It provides autonomy, it provides freedom, and it still provides, assuming that there's the security and productivity components that you've just kind of outlined right there. It provides a great user experience. And I think that the one thing, Sage, that's kind of existed, diametrically opposing principles of IT wants control and security, users want a great user experience, right? And those things typically don't go hand in hand. But what we're starting to see is that they are. Like, you're starting to see a little bit of the convergence where the user experience, I mean, like you talk to Scott, you talk to Windows 365, and he's like, I reimagined Windows 365 with only a little bit of VDI expertise. I brought people in that were regular Windows power users to help design the overall experience. So when you talk about, David, making it simple for the admin and still delightful for the user, that's the same guiding principles that like everyone is trying to use around workspace delivery as well. So what's great about that for the user community out there is that I think that you're starting to see those two different diametrically opposing forces become one, right? I think it's going to be a lot easier, especially if you can leverage AI to ensure that you're protecting your surface attack area as part of it, right?
That's important too. Yeah, we do.
If all of a sudden, not only are you more productive, but the AI is also working alongside you to ensure that your surface. Yeah, exactly.
We see customers a lot of times too right now trying to move to the center, sometimes they have 3-4 different platforms and they're fully baked in them. It's difficult then to manage those or to migrate out of them or to go to a new platform. We see a lot of times now people trying to decouple, get a third party like Liquidware in there or whoever, and manage that separately from that platform so that they can use any platform that they want.
Right.
And so we see that move to centers being, something that, we've been called on by many large organizations, I would say end of last year and beginning of this year, especially with all the different transformation happening in the landscape out there. You've got vendors that are consolidating, moving from, one management to another and changing the way they do business. And it's caused certain uncertainties. And so it's helped Liquidware's business. I don't want to have anybody else's difficulties be my, help us, but at the end of the day, it has helped us. And so that's another something we see, us helping with this year. So
it's interesting because actually, Sage, that's been one of our biggest plays as well. Like people finding use cases where they want to decommission as much of SCCM as they can, right? And it's time. It's had its day in the sun, and it's served us loyally for 25 years, and it goes in the EUC Hall of Fame. But it's time, right? When we start thinking about where we go next. So we're starting to see a lot of the pains, David, to your point, become opportunities for us.
So cool. So, and we're both in Chicago, and we're not that far away, and we definitely got to be getting together and probably doing another one of these, but maybe with that other concept that we were talking about. So,
listen, we'll have a GA announcement and we'll have a party. Let's do that. We'll do a Lambo.
Well, that'd be nice, because one thing we didn't do on this call is tell people more about what we've been doing together. And I know that that's going to be for another call here, and we want to kind of step into this because there's just so much that both companies have, especially 4 products on my side and whatnot. So I know I monopolized probably a lot of the conversation. I appreciate you letting me do so. So thanks for that visibility and time. So.
No, absolutely. I mean, the point of these podcasts is, part of it is education, but another part of it is just getting different perspectives from other industry leaders, right? I certainly don't have any of the answers as far as you ask my partner, Mike, and Mike will tell you that guy doesn't know anything. But, if I look at listening to the way that you approach things versus Scott approaches things versus I approach them, and, we've had Coop and we've had Christian and great guests on for this. But every time I walk away, I learn like 2 or 3 things. It's not one thing. It's 2 or 3 different things that you've learned over your career and principles that you're applying to the projects that you're working on that are reusable, right? And I think that if anyone that's listening to the podcast in the EUC community gets even half of that value, then I think we're doing our jobs.
Yeah. Well, thanks for making a platform available so that we could get the message out there. It's hard nowadays with all the goodness that's out there to have a big enough megaphone to get heard, right? So do appreciate the exposure, and look forward to getting on this call again, giving them updates on combined efforts that we've been putting in together on the development side. And again, maybe we can do it over a different type of alternative medium next time. So
Sage will come out for that. I feel.
Sounds good. Yeah. Sounds good.
Make it all nice and pretty. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and joining us on the podcast. Greatly appreciate it.